even confirmed it was
People
Hamas.
disgust me.
All right. You have Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks. Piers Morgan. And as you can already tell, this gets absolutely heated, as it should. This is a situation that it's a genocide. You're dealing with the murder and bombing of innocent people and civilians, and it's really tragic. And on the other side, you have the flat earther equivalent of the debate, the discussion, where you have people trying to twist it and propagandize and do all this crazy shit. And it gets to a level where it's so frustrating, where you just have to, you end up in a situation like Anna Kasparian, in that sort of scream fest. But we'll get into it. I'll let the video play out. Maybe we'll have some thoughts along the way. But without further ado, here we go.
The reality is Hamas is a dictatorial, tyrannical regime that obliterates any emancipation that the Palestinian people have to self-expression and the freedom of movement. And I call on all peoples, whether it's on college campuses, whether it's in the media, those in Western civilization, if you truly care about the Palestinian people, then you do everything in your power to amplify the work of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which just yesterday gave 1 million boxes of aid and is doing the exact same thing today and will do the exact same thing tomorrow.
Okay, let me shot at people.
I've given you a good chance to speak there.
Palestinians have died as they. I have to get this out. Okay. You want to talk about how Greta Thunberg got involved in some sort of, political theater, whatever. I don't care what anyone thinks about Greta Thunberg. I see that as a distraction. What it's distracting from is the fact that IDF soldiers are intentionally shooting at and killing desperate Palestinians as they're trying to get humanitarian aid from this Israeli-backed organization, which of course is able to even exist because they defamed UNRWA. They starved Palestinians for months. Shut up. They starved Palestinians for months. And then, as the Palestinians are desperate for food, they lure them in with this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and shoot at them. Upward of 200 people since late May have been shot at and killed by Israeli soldiers. Do not forget that. That's the heart of this story. And let's not forget about the 232 journalists in Gaza that have been slaughtered by the IDF.
The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation even confirmed it was Hamas.
Disgust me.
They confirmed it was Hamas.
There's no humanity with people like you, Emily. No humanity.
Intentionally lying and blaming the IDF.
I can't even handle your voice.
The IDF is the one who is assuring that there's humanitarian aid.
I'm an Armenian. I know genocide when I see it.
That have been distributed already.
11 genocide. You are a genocider
and
a defender of genocide. Disgusting.
I know you don't like facts, Anna, but this is the reality. The only person who is threatening, the only group that is threatening the distribution of aid is Hamas. That is who has been shooting at innocent Palestinians.
No military
Propagandists would say.
Israeli
it's a lie that has been debunked.
Don't all talk over each other. Don't talk over each other.
Like the Israelis are the victims.
All right, here's what I would say. Emily, here's what I would say.
Hamas shot at them.
Here's what I would say. We don't actually know for a fact.
Hamas shot at them.
Okay, we don't actually know. We don't actually know for a fact who has done all this shooting, or how much of it was done by the IDF, or how much by Hamas. I'm sure Hamas wouldn't hesitate to shoot their own. They've done it many times. But we don't know, and there's a reason we don't know, Emily, for a fact, is that the Israeli government continues to ban international journalists from going into Gaza. And there's only one reason, as Jeremy Bowen, the BBC's Middle East editor, said in a very interesting and thoughtful, lengthy piece about all this. There can only be one conclusion, because at the start of this, the IDF took international journalists to the kibbutzes where this horror had unfurled and showed them everything. But ever since then, they banned international journalists from going to see what's happening in Gaza. And the only conclusion of these two positions, one showing what happened to Israelis, but not allowing anyone to see what's happening to Palestinians, the only logical conclusion is that the IDF is doing things they don't want people to see.
So, Piers, I'm actually really glad you brought that up.
Hang on, Omar. I want Emily to respond to that.
I actually agree with your position. I think that the state of Israel should do much more to ensure that international journalists are able to freely enter Gaza. I think that there are other concerns on the ground, like security concerns, because it has been that Hamas has taken international journalists hostage. You know, as well as me, Alan Johnston is a great example.
Hold on. And I think Anne's going to say, because Israel has literally like freaking nuke bombed the world kitchen workers on their way to deliver food and aid. It's the IDF that is the one that the international community and journalists need to be afraid of. Obviously, Hamas as a terrorist organization as well should be quite wary of. But I would wager to bet that Israel has killed more. The IDF has killed more journalists than has Hamas in this conflict.
Of this in 2021, as well as 2014, we saw that Hamas was pressuring international journalists on the ground, not allowing reports to be sent out unless they were approved by Hamas. So there is an actual threat in addition.
But the risk assessment should be made by the journalists. It's not for the IDF.
I agree with you.
Or the Israeli government to determine a risk assessment for independent international journalists. They will decide.
I agree with you. I think that Israel should ensure and do everything they can. I agree with you. I think that Israel should do everything they can in order to ensure their security as much as humanly possible. But there are a lot of factors at play here, including the use of human shields by Hamas, including the pressure on international journalists, including the threat of hostage taking. And so there are a lot of factors that play into this decision. Now, I'm with you on the end result. I think that this is something that Israel really needs to do, and it's critically important because I believe that the information that they find in the materials that they are able to go through, in the materials that even the IDF has released about some of these people, some of the claims that they have made, are things that should be scrutinized by the international community on the ground.
All right, Omar.
We have to be clear first about who is killing the people who are going to these distribution centers. There's always a pattern that repeats itself over and over again of the Israeli government claiming they had nothing to do with an incident until there is an independent investigation. In this case, in the most recent shooting, CNN did an analysis of the recordings and concluded that the gunfire was consistent with something that would come out of the Israeli military, and that's why they pointed the finger at the Israeli military. And this is a pattern that repeats itself over and over again. You had the killing of 15 paramedics by the Israeli military that initially the Israeli military pretended they had nothing to do with, until the facts were uncovered, until they dug up the ground and saw where the ambulance was buried, until they got the recordings of the incident. And once they're caught red-handed, it's always like, oops, that must have been an accident. But at what point are we going to stop listening to a government that has produced a record of lying over and over again? I mean, they've pointed at a calendar on a wall in a hospital that simply has the days of the week on it written in Arabic, and just assuming that this is for a Western audience that doesn't read Arabic. And so they point at it and say, these are the names of terrorists on this calendar. I mean, we just have to get to the point to where we can't give this government the benefit of the doubt anymore. They and everybody who does apologetics for them, like Emily does, are simply full of shit. There's just no other way to put it. I mean, we have to hold bare minimal level of standard.
The face of someone that's just absolutely and completely full of shit. You could see it right there.
For the information that comes. And I'm sorry, at some point, when you produce a record of lying over and over and over and over and over again, we have to stop taking anything that you say seriously. And we have to look at the fact and to look at a government that is carrying out genocidal atrocities in Gaza, as defined by virtually every expert on the genocide and every major human rights organization. All of them at this point line up and say, these are genocidal policies. We know who's responsible for atrocities being committed against the civilian population that is being deliberately destroyed in Gaza, to pursue what Smotrich said, to empty Gaza out of Palestinians. That is the plan. And just for the record, Hamas had offered to give up governance of Gaza and release all the hostages, but that was not good enough for Israel, because right now Netanyahu is saying the goal is to pursue Trump's plan of emptying Gaza out. Dropsite has done incredible reporting on the details of these negotiations back and forth. And to see Hamas willing to give up governing Gaza and release all the hostages, and Israel still find a reason to say no to that deal, tells you what Israel's real intentions are. And their intentions are about destroying Palestinian existence. And they're doing it in the West Bank as well, except at a slower pace.
All right.
Wow. Holy shit. So that was a pretty fiery clip there. Anna Kasparian, you know, she's had a bit of a how should we say this, an evolution over the, you know, the last couple of years or so, into some foraying into some right-wing framing against the far left, you know, sort of the overall trend on TYT with Jenkins and them. But you know, when there are certain issues that are so cut and dry, so clear as this one, it's you just have to scream about it, I guess. You know, so totally yeah, that Emily person is a complete nightmare. go and do the propaganda for murder, for genocide, for world global destabilization, and just do it, grinning and smiling and happy to do it. So it just goes to show you, even as much as you want to even try to like take their framing or whatever, it's just like you can't even go there. These people are twisted. Anyway, let me know what your thoughts are. Drop a comment, join the discussion. Anna Kasparian, and there you have it.